My grandparents loved Rush Limbaugh.
Right?
Rush Limbaugh existed at a time when there was right-wing talking heads and personalities, and I think that Rush Limbaugh's views were deeply Rush Limbaugh's views. And I think it's why I even have sort of more respect for it. I actually think in the case of Sean Hannity, much of what Sean Hannity says are truly his views. But remember, it wasn't long ago that that Tucker Carlson. Remember when he went and did a big show in Russia and
Yeah.
walked through a grocery store in Russia, saying how great it was there.
Yeah.
And I won't say this for Tucker, but there's been all sorts of people in the right wing sphere getting paid by foreign governments to put out things in social media, to put out things in real media. So whether it's performative or real, I don't know. But what I do know is the America First principles that got Donald Trump elected the first time, this populist agenda, this no new wars, this we don't want foreign intervention and we don't want to be involved in foreign countries. Like we don't want to do anything until our kids are in good schools, until we have good jobs, until we have health care. The way he was elected by that forgotten American
Yeah.
is what MAGA represents. So Tucker Carlson changing his tune, is it performative or is it real? I think it's real in terms of that's how Tucker's actual viewers and listeners feel. That's what that MAGA base is.
So what
What do you
Molly
think?
gave me permission to do, which is another thing I don't think we've done, maybe we've done it in the old days when you and I used to host a show together, is I just want to play for you. And again, I often think doing things like this is dangerous, but within the context
You're
of this
dangerous,
discussion,
Ali Velshi.
I want to play for you what Alex Jones said about this.
Oh, God.
This is not what we voted for. And we've never seen rhetoric out of presidents like this when we go to war, even if you're for this war. This is really bad PR, folks. This is what I'm talking about, the way Trump's behaving. Way more erratic. His speech, is not coherent all the time. You can't deny this is happening. So this is a clown show, folks, and I'm really worried. I'm really, really worried about this.
So I think the reason this matters, Ali, is not because Alex Jones is a good source of anything, but what he is in normal times is a Donald Trump ride or die. When, Donald Trump always said, remember his famous line, he could kill someone on Fifth Avenue and his base would still be with him? Many, many times I think that's the case. But
Yeah.
when you see Alex Jones saying, this doesn't work for me, brother, that's when you're going like, oh, maybe that Fifth Avenue argument doesn't work anymore.
So let's look at Trump's approval ratings. It's been remarkably consistent lately, the approval versus disapproval. And I want to be clear to people, when you go into specific issues like the economy, he's underwater, immigration, things he ran on, but this is just generally, do you approve or disapprove? CNN has an approval of 35%, disapproval of 64%. The Economist YouGov, almost identical numbers. The approval rate is 35%. The disapproval is lower. It's at 58%. And Quinnipiac has approval of 38%. That's the most favorable for Trump, and a disapproval of 56%, which is also the most favorable for Trump. Bottom line is he's underwater across the board on these things. But here's the part, that 35 or 38% or 34 in some polls, 33%, that seems to be Donald Trump's base, right? That's the bunch of people to whom he says I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. And I suspect unless you shoot those people, they are ride or die for Donald Trump. And that's a
Yes.
big crowd. I mean, it is enough in a country where you don't need 50% to win. It's still the biggest crowd of people in America. Meaning the
It's
biggest
still
single
the
identifiable. There are more women, there are more men, there are more, Democrat. But the fact is, it's still the biggest sort of single electoral chunk.
Yes. The thing that I'm hung up on though, when the hardcore MAGAs leave Trump, where do they go?
Yeah.
I think they don't vote. Like they're
Well,
certainly not voting for a Democrat.
this is a very interesting story because last night, as you know, we had the elections in Georgia's 14th district, right? This is the Marjorie Taylor Greene district, in which Donald Trump last election, when Marjorie Taylor Greene won, he had a 37-point margin. He won by 37 points. Look what happened last night. Sean Harris, who ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene, got about 34% last time. Then in the election a few weeks ago, he got 37%. 44.1% he got versus the guy who won, 55.9. That's a 12-point spread. 12 points in one of the Trumpiest districts in the entire country that Donald Trump took by 37 points last time. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene did not endorse anybody in this race. Donald Trump did endorse the guy who won. That tells you something. Sean Harris was
You
not
know
going to
what?
win that.
Here's why you're right and I'm wrong. Here's why you're 100% right and I'm 100% wrong. Because I was thinking about it in terms of Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. And I was closing my eyes and thinking, if Alex Jones, when Alex Jones and Alex Jones supporters turn on Donald Trump, would they walk in and vote for Kamala Harris? And the answer is no, absolutely not. They never would. However, when we're looking at all of these races on the ground in cities and states across the country, those people who are running for office are not running. They're not running for president. They're on the ground, and the voters in those communities who are less red and blue.
So let's put the picture back up.
So you're right,
Sean Harris.
and I'm wrong. You are right,
Let's put that
and
poll
I'm
up again because I want to tell you the interesting thing about Sean Harris.
You just want to keep talking about it because it's very rare when I tell you that you're right.
Well, yes, correct. Democrats, get into this hang-wringing about more progressive and more. Sean Harris, he's black in an overwhelmingly white district. He is a cattle rancher, so he understands the rural needs of his community. He is a retired brigadier general, right? He's not a progressive. He did have the endorsement of a number of key progressives like Pete Buttigieg and Ralph Warnock. But that's the point. Like, he was out there talking about affordability. He's out there talking about tariffs. He's out there talking about regular things. Marjorie Taylor Greene, before she left, talked about the fact that people were calling her about Epstein, calling her about healthcare subsidies, calling her about
Marjorie Taylor Greene in December of last year was ringing the bell about the spike in healthcare costs and what that was going to do to families across Georgia. So you're making the best point ever that Sean Harris is not Zohran Mamdani.
Yes.
And Sean Harris wouldn't win in Brooklyn and Mamdani wouldn't win in Georgia.
Correct.
But these local elections, people like Sean Harris are speaking to the people of Georgia who are getting frustrated with all political parties. Who are getting frustrated just saying, I'm voting people into Congress and they're having shutdowns every damn year.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. You're totally right about that. We have an email from Peter Adams who says,
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Peter. According to the president during his speech, he said that the United States has more oil than anybody. Why aren't we using all this oil to keep our gasoline prices low? This is a very, very good topic, a very interesting topic. Some countries, including Iran, do use their money, their governmental money, to subsidize oil. So gas prices in Iran, for instance, are some of the cheapest in the entire world. Not only do we not do that in the United States, we actually have the opposite. We have a tax on gas prices that keeps our highway system going. It's basically an infrastructure tax. Now, you could argue, there have been people who've argued about taking that away. Some have argued for increasing it. It goes to good use. But the point is, we actually have gas, then we have state taxes and excise taxes and federal taxes on top of our gas prices. But the other thing to remember, and this is important, it's true and it's important that we are one of the largest oil producers on earth, but oil is priced universally, right?
Hold on. Yeah. I need you to slow down and say this again. And the reason I need you to do it is because the argument the administration continues to make is this isn't the 1980s. We're not dependent on oil from the Middle East like we once were, and we're not. We're far more independent. However, I want you to just say this again and slow it down when it comes to the price of oil. Go.
So oil, like all major commodities, gold, wheat, anything else, is a global thing. Even though you might make oil in Texas and ship it to Louisiana, the price you pay for oil is set on a global market. So whether you buy oil or gold or wheat or whatever, the price is global. So when there is a shortage of oil in the world, the price of oil goes up, our price of oil goes up, and our price of gas goes up. We are not a closed loop. In the old world, you could make whatever you wanted in your country and you keep it in your country. And sometimes Donald Trump imagines that. That's why he wants these high tariffs. You buy your stuff, grow your stuff, sell your stuff locally. That's not the world in which we live. There are very few countries in the world that live like that. North Korea is one of them. They're sort of cut off from everybody. They get some stuff from China.
Okay, but can you just realize that that's who we're comparing ourselves to right now?
Well, there's a reason why we don't want to be that, right?
Korea.
I grew up in Canada before there was free trade. So guess what you didn't have? All winter, you didn't have oranges because you had to pay a massive tariff on orange. You didn't have lettuce. You made salad with cabbage, right?
Gross.
This is free trade means you can buy things from other people that you don't make. So if you're America and you're not the biggest oil producer in the world, you still want to be able to buy oil and have have gasoline. So this is why commodities work on a global basis. So we do have a lot of oil. What we're not going to get into is an embargo. What we had back then was an embargo. There were people who were not selling oil to the United States, and we had lineups, we had shortages. You couldn't even pay enough to get the gas you wanted. We don't have a shortage of gasoline. It just costs more right now because there's a global shortage. There are ways around this. You can increase your oil output. The problem is Iran is not just a manufacturer of a producer of oil. That Strait of Hormuz is the problem, right? It's a choke point. It controls way more oil than it actually produces. In fact, Iran could produce zero oil and it could still make the price of oil go up because it controls the choke point. So
And now, and it's unclear if it is based on the breaking news, but now even if the ceasefire does hold and the Strait of Hormuz is open, you now have to pay a big fat toll to use it.
Yes, they want
and so Iran is looking to make back some of all of the money that they've obviously lost, the damage that they've endured because of the war, and now you're going to have to pay up to use the strait.
They want
so
$1
Iran
per
comes
barrel.
out ahead.
They want $1 per barrel. Like these tankers sometimes have 1 million barrels of oil on them, right? The tanker that Russia just sent to Cuba was 700,000 barrels of oil. Like I got no love for the Iranian regime. This could be one of those weird situations where they come out stronger than they went into this whole thing. This is just badly planned. If you are going to cause a war that's going to stop the flow of petrochemicals and fertilizer and oil, you really have to think this through. And again, the evidence is out there, Stephanie, that they had the intel. They knew this is exactly how it was going to unfold, and it's unfolding exactly that way.
And that is the difference. And that's also why you're watching this administration fumble communications around this war so much. It's why, and I'm going to say it, Pete Hegseth has lost so much credibility because they have the intel and what they're doing flies directly in the face of it. And I just want to give a shout out to Pentagon reporters. Think about the lengths that this Pentagon has gone to kick the reporters out of the physical space, to not give them access. They've made it almost impossible, but the reporting coming out, covering the Pentagon, covering national security is so unbelievably strong. The fact that you are seeing so many leaks from within the department, especially knowing how serious they are about punishing leakers,
they're talking about throwing them in jail. Donald Trump has threatened two organizations
that shows you how serious things must be. If like in Trump 1.0, it was a really leaky White House, right? They would leave meetings in the Oval Office, and before they were even out the door, people would be calling journalists, and you would have a play-by-play of those meetings. That's not the case this time, but the amount of excellent reporting, important reporting, so we actually understand what's happening in Iran, what the intelligence is. It's been amazing.
For all of history, important reporting, go back to Watergate, Pentagon Papers, all this stuff, have relied on leaks because you can love your government or hate your government. It can be the government you voted for or didn't vote for, but we are not meant to just take our government's word for everything. We are there to bear witness and hold power to account. This government would like you not to have to hold them to account, and that's why leaks are actually important. The average person might say, well, it's really bad to leak, and in some environments it probably is really bad to leak, but there are also environments in which you would just not know the truth if reporters were not able to get to people who would reach out to them to tell them the truth.
Factual leaking is crucially important.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so anonymous sourcing is always very dangerous because
you don't know if it's true.
If reporters are just relying on a single anonymous source, you don't know if it's true. You don't know the motivation of that source.
Yeah.
But when you're seeing credible news outlets and the important reporting around what's happening in Iran and how so much of it flies in the face of what the administration is telling us, it matters. All right, we got a question coming to us from Madeline Finch. Here you go. How high will gas be a gallon if Trump doesn't bring home our troops by the summer? We don't know, but we know the answer is it will not be going down.
Yeah, very hard to know because this is a commodity, and if people knew, then we'd be putting bets on Kalshi, and then you and I would be doing the show from our yacht and helicopter. But let me
Correct.
tell you, for the people who are in the region, the Qatari government had said at one point that if I'm just checking the price of oil, so we're at about $97 a barrel right now, so it's down very, very significantly. It's down $15 in the last 24 hours, but if the war were to continue, they thought that the price of oil might go to $150 a barrel, right? So 50% higher than where it is right now. And again, the link between gas prices and oil prices is a direct correlation. So imagine gas prices at $4 a gallon. If it's up another 50%, you're looking at possibly $6 a gallon. Now, things happen because once you get past $4 a gallon, people start to change their behavior, right? At $4.50 a gallon, people will start to drive less. At $5 a gallon, they will start to carpool or do different things, or there'll be a push to have more work from home. So you might not get to $6 a gallon. And this is, again, the Qataris have sort of said, based on what they think oil prices could go to $150 a barrel, that mathematically that could lead to $6 a gallon. That's not a prediction because I don't know these things. And
by the way, summer is the worst season for that to happen.
It increases
because
the
that's
demand.
when Americans are driving the most.
Yeah. So that was a very good question. These are excellent questions, by the way. We really appreciate this. Stephanie and I were just talking earlier to say, we talk about these things all the time, and it's amazing to get people's questions to actually understand what they all know, what you want to have us talk about it, what you want to have us talk about. Hey, Jim has sent us an email question Jim Finch, in which he says, whatever, any relation to Madeline Finch.
As I say, I wonder if he's related to.
Do you think that Senator Mark Warner is correct that the president will try to steal the midterms and then all future elections, ending our 250-year democracy? Well, that's dark. But
Dark Mark.
Tim Snyder, the professor from Yale, does make this point, and you and I have talked about this, Stephanie, that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but things seem to be more real than not. And the idea, in fact, his whole attitude about Iran is that Donald Trump attacks Iran with the idea that Iran, of all the countries we get involved in, is the one that has the capability to actually do something harmful to the United States in terms of maybe a terrorist attack or something of that nature, which will then empower Donald Trump to declare an emergency, because he likes declaring emergencies for all sorts of reasons. But this emergency would actually have him, bring the military into the streets right in time for an election, in which case you can seize ballots. It's a complicated theory. And in a normal world, I'd say that's a weird out there conspiracy theory, but we're not in a normal world. So I don't know. I would say that all things are connected, right? Epstein's connected to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi's connected to Iran. Gas prices are connected to elections. And there's a lot of effort that this administration is putting into to convince people that elections are dangerous, unfair, and unsafe, right? The mail-in stuff, the SAVE Act. So I think it's wise to think like Jim thinks. Nothing is disconnected from anything right now. So don't know where that leads. Don't know what it means. Don't know if Mark Warner is right about this. I don't know that any of us actually know. Trying to get inside of Donald Trump's head is a very complicated endeavor. So I don't know. I don't know what you think about this, Stephanie. But
Do you know the sad part about that? Trying to get inside Donald Trump's head is a very complicated endeavor, which is why so many people in the business community that I've covered for a long time, I've really lost respect for, because when they used to have sound analysis of what's happening in any political spectrum, so many of them are kind of like if you can't beat them, join them. They have found ways to ingratiate themselves to the president, to get themselves the tax benefits they want or the advantages, or get involved in business deals. And that is the one thing that does make me feel, when we talk about moves like this or how Russia operates, the way the economy has worked for the super rich and for specific businesses in Trump 2.0, that's where I see us being the closest. That's where I see us losing our democratic values.
Well, that's what the oligarchy is, right?
The country when you talk about the country we have been over the last 250 years, that is where I see day in and day out of oh my gosh.
Because we've always been a country where rich companies and rich people can lobby and arguably get a better deal than the rest of people. But there was at least a system why it was lobbying. Now this feels a lot more like open grift, where during the election, the president says to the oil industry, if I can raise $1 billion from you guys, I'll deregulate.
You can have whatever you want.
What? You have whatever you want, right? And it goes one step further now. Now it just seems to be deals. Like the amount of benefit that is going to people in Trump, sort of putting aside the poly market Kalshi betting, right? The betting on when bombs will happen or when things are going on. Donald Trump's kids are involved in a drone company that is trying to make deals with the Middle East. Now imagine that.
Yeah, and that
All of
was
these-
right. And remember, Trump months ago signed an executive order that said no drones from Chinese companies here.
Right. So
And the amount of money, not just the Trump children, but sort of the wealthy business community around Donald Trump, these people are making astronomical amounts of money.
yeah.
That they're sort of like, oh my God, if you can't beat him, join him. I'll
Right.
just get on my mega yacht
And
and leave.
that's the
That,
oligarchy
to
that you're
me,
talking about in
is
Russia. Right?
really-
Nobody
so-
fights
so
nobody
when you-
fights Putin.
So
Because
when
at
you
some
talk
point
about, yes,
You'll be the
Right,
odd
right.
one out, right? If you're going to fight him.
when you talk about Tim Snyder and Mark Warner and warning what could happen with the elections, like I really don't know. But where I see the breadcrumbs, what is
Sure.
the path?
I'm
Gingerbread.
I'm gluten-free, so I can't have
yeah,
either.
Of course. It is when I look at the massive grift that has gone on and the favors with certain parts of the business
Yeah.
community, that's where I'm like, no. This is not how the great America and our democracy work.